Welcome to Dram Talk, your new mates on your journey into the world of whiskey. I'm Brad.
And I'm Daniel. And today we'll be looking at Ardbeg Scorch, the committee release.
Right, so Daniel, what have we been up to lately?
Yes, I guess before we get into this dram, we've just poured them, so we'll let them sit out for a bit. Already getting that kind of intense, peaty, smoky smell coming up from it.
Yeah, the char's filling the room. I love it.
Yep, yep. It's making my mouth water now, but I think we'll try and maintain some kind of self-control and have a bit of a chat before we get into the dram. So I guess like the most exciting thing we've been up to recently was we attended a whiskey event called Whisky Live. So that was in Sydney. And how would you describe it, Brad? I think it was kind of like a whiskey conference in a way. It was like in this big auditorium room at Randwick Racecourse. And there was like a whole bunch of distilleries had set up like a variety of different stalls. And so you could just walk around to each of them and they gave you free samples of the whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good experience. We got to sample some great Australian whiskey as well and see what they were doing and really innovating in some areas that we're not really seeing globally. So that's really great to see, like from a local point of view. And we still got to try some whiskeys that we really haven't normally, I guess, given much thought to. And as well, we got to try some that we do love and we know we love. In terms of that, it was a great experience. It was well worth the money. And I mean, we got to try Octomore. We went there first. Probably not
Yeah.
the wisest of moves. But hey, that's what the water's for, just to reset. Probably a couple of glasses of that, and then we were good to go
Yeah,
everywhere
we
else.
couldn't we couldn't really not head straight for a peated whiskey.
Yeah.
But I mean, we didn't record there. One because I think we made a decision to really be in the moment and enjoy the evening, and not because I forgot to bring an SD card for the recorder.
Yeah, it was more the former, not the latter. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, and we it's for the same reason we kind of didn't really do much on Instagram or like really log our time there. It was mainly just there was so much going on and we had so many interesting conversations with a lot of the people at the stalls. Brad was saying primarily around like local distillers there that we were just kind of caught up in the moment so much. So I think that's why
yeah,
we'll give like kind of a brief run through now.
yeah,
And
like
as I
and
said,
just
like we
to
tried.
yeah, sorry, just to add on that as well. It's just we we were really engaged in conversations with them, and unfortunately, a lot of those conversations did drag on, and we missed the food numerous times
Yeah.
because we were so engaged in whiskey conversation. But that's what we were there
Mhm.
for anyway. So it was really,
Yeah,
really, yeah,
exactly.
it was a great time.
And it was about like, yeah, savoring those moments between people who had shared an equal passion for whiskey. So it was really about just like what we were getting from that like face-to-face engagement. That's one of the things we love about this. And I think we've mentioned it before, is that, it's just a great community.
Yeah, just going on to some standouts for us. For me particularly, from the Australian distilleries, I really enjoyed 78. That was
Yeah.
really really good, and I'm thinking of the wider industry as a whole, particularly the Scotch. I really was surprised by Highland Park. From the expressions that we tried there, we passed on the 10 because that is readily available in Australia and at a very, very affordable price as well. So we did pass on that. We started in at the 12, then we went on to the 18, and then we had the Volfather. Wait, no, sorry, it was the 12, then the Volfather, then we were treated to the 18 because that bottle was under the table. So that
Yeah.
the 18 was very, very good.
Yeah. It was like the 12 amplified.
Yeah. So Highland Park is from Orkney. They're a sherry.
Mhm.
The 18-year-old was a sherried expression, and oh man, it was good. It was bloody good. And the Volfather as well is like their peated or their most peated whiskey anyway. And of course, you already know Daniel and I were gonna love that, and that was great.
Yeah. And I think like Highland Park's kind of peak levels of their whiskey sits around, I guess, like the Talisker level. And so to some degree, it was a little bit reminiscent of Talisker. It kind of had a little bit of that island coastal bite to it, which, we absolutely loved. I know probably one of the biggest treats for me was the Lafroig 25.
Yeah, that was great. That was really,
That
really
was,
good.
that was such a kind of good thing. We had a brief moment where we were able to get some food, and we're like, okay, let's finally have a chance to take a breath and eat something. And then we heard like last call for the Lafroig masterclass, and so we just like legged it around the auditorium, and then went into the room, and we discovered that they were going to be trying the Lafroig 25. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and for 25, if you can never get your hands on a dram of that, do yourself a favor and do it. It's bloody good.
It's next level. It's just there is it's struggling so much to come up with words for how much I enjoyed that. So I guess that leads us on to our next kind of segment here is you actually bought a bottle of the Volfather.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Volfather. It was something that it just didn't leave my mind the whole night.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought to myself, I don't think I can leave here without taking a whole bottle of this home with me, because it's just stuck in my mind for whatever reason. And I just kept going back to it. So I really, really enjoyed it, and it left an impression on me. So I went out, bought a bottle, and I bought a bottle of Ugdal as well, because why not?
Exactly. And they did have it as like a reasonable price, like a good 10 to 20 plus dollars cheaper than what you'd find at online or at a bottle shop. And I got a bottle of the Octomore 11.1. I mean, I'm pretty I knew I was leaving with an Octomore, and they only had the 11.1 and the 10.3. And while the 10.3 was really good, and in case anyone doesn't really know too much about Octomores, 11.1, like the 0.1s, they're always made from barley grown on mainland of Scotland. And then I'm pretty sure they are aged in American oak casks. And then the 0.3s are barley grown on Islay, like on the farm there at Brookladdy. And they're aged in European casks, or a mix of European and American casks. And the 11.2 is just European casks, but with barley grown on the mainland of Scotland. So I would have loved like a 0.3, and I've heard good things about the 11.3, but I think I left with the 11.1 because it was just really good.
Yeah, equally satisfied. When we tried the two Octomores, I guess I would say my palate was more inclined to the 10.3.
Mm-hmm.
But it was such a small, I guess, discrepancy in how much I liked it that it could have gone either way.
Yeah, and I think that was the kind of determining factor. Like, I agree with you. Like, there were parts of both of them that I liked to an equal extent. But then when it came to looking at the price, the 10.3 was some $50 more than the 11.1. And I was like, I don't think I enjoyed it $50 more. So that was ultimately one of the main factors in my decision making there. But just super happy to finally own a bottle of an Octomore, being such big lovers of peat.
Yeah. Even for me, like, my intentions were to fully leave Whisky Live with a purchase of an Octomore, but Highland Park had other ideas. So
yeah, and that's completely fair, because like that was a bottle, like that Volfather, I was like you as well, so kind of caught up with how much I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And then when I saw it a reasonable price, like what was it, 135?
Yeah, it was like 135 for 140.
Yeah, like it's such a decent price. I'm like, I could get a bottle, but then when you were saying that you were going to get a bottle of it, I was like, cool, I don't have to worry about that because Brad's got it, so I can just mooch off him.
Yeah, and of course, seeing Ugdal at a very affordable price as well, that was kind of a no-brainer for me. So yeah, and I already love Ardbeg, so what can you do?
Yeah, and I mean, like, to some extent, little bit of impulse purchases, but we're always going to buy bottles from there. So it was just more which ones are going to surprise us on the day. And I guess Volfather was the biggest one.
Yeah, that definitely was the standout. I think, like you mentioned as well, like for yourself, you did say that you were a bit taken aback as well by our experience at Highland Park.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe because we got to try the 18-year-old, which was under the table, so it wasn't really available for everyone else to taste. But I don't know if that, if we felt a little special. So I don't know if that was a deciding factor there. But our time at the Highland Park store was really good. Had great conversation, and yeah, absolutely. And of course, you can see walked away with a bottle of Allfather, so you can kind of see you can see the impression that left on us. We also got to try some rye whiskey as well. Great stuff.
Yeah.
But overall, in terms of our experience at the at Whisky Live, it was very, very enjoyable. I would definitely recommend it. And just whiskey events like that in general are just such a great way to engage in the community, speak to people from the distillery, or even if it's just their brand ambassadors or whatever. It's still people that have a passion for whiskey, people that share what you enjoy, people that still have knowledge to impart and share. And at the same time, you're going to get to try some really, really great whiskey, and whiskey that you probably normally can't get your hands on, right? Because I don't know when I'm ever going to get to try Lefroy 25 again, if ever.
Oh, absolutely. Like one day soon, Brad, when this really takes off, we can buy whiskey for research sake, of course.
Yeah. Or, if Lefroy want to send us a dram or two.
Yeah. We'd be happy to accept a couple of drams from Lefroy 25, so we can properly review it on the podcast, give it the attention it deserves.
Yeah. But yeah, just to sum it up, such a great experience. Of course, I'm sure the event was feeling impacts of COVID. From speaking to people there, people did mention that the previous Whisky Live was a lot bigger and there were a lot more distillers and distilleries present. But of course, everyone did the best they could, and there was still quite a lot on show. So overall, though, being our first, I guess, whiskey convention, so to say, it's such a great time.
Yeah, and it was very fast paced as well. Like, it's not one of the ones where you sit down at a table and you methodically work your way through. It's like all on your feet. You're traveling from stall to stall. Just you get like small samples. I think they're about 15 mil, which you wouldn't really want any more because you need to be able to try a lot of different ones, and you want to be somewhat lucid as you progress through the evening. So it was like a 3-hour window we had to try a whole bunch of different ones, which sounded like a long time to begin with, but it really wasn't. Like, there was so many we didn't make it to that we would have really loved to, and some that I've like kind of heard about like since then. And I'm like, I saw that stall at Whisky Live, should have gone there. Like, I think OCD was one of them.
Obsessive compulsive disorder.
Give me Ottercraft Distilling. So that's another Australian distiller.
Okay.
Could you try again?
Oh, sorry, just started Siri talking. Yes, it's called Ottercraft Distiller.
Okay, I don't remember seeing them there. Were they there?
Yeah, they were there. They were kind of. We didn't see them because we basically ran straight past them on our way to Brookladdy.
Ah, okay, makes sense.
So they specialize in premium whiskey and vodka.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't recall seeing them, but yeah, of course. We were, I guess, a little bit of the blinders on for Brookladdy. Yep. So yeah, that was the first port of call.
Like always next year.
Yeah, of course.
And I guess like the only other things that have really been going on is like any kind of long time. I say long time, we haven't even been going for a year, but any listeners who have been with us from the start would know that we did speak at one point about doing like a whiskey tin where we could contribute like tokens or money if we did something on the podcast that was kind of a whiskey sin, and we would use that to then buy bottles for the show. That kind of fell by the wayside, mainly because I think we just got extra cautious with what we were doing in our recordings, and then we're also recording remotely. But we have like purchased a joint bottle. It's The Starwood Ginger Beer Cask. So Starwood, for our international listeners, is an Australian distillery, and they usually do. I think it's a yearly release. I think
Yeah.
this is batch
Number
6.
6. Yeah, batch 6.
Yeah. So this one was finished for 6 months in ginger beer casks. So we won't spoil too much now. We'll probably do an episode on that shortly. But yeah, some kind of interesting bottlings. And then the other newest addition to our collection is the one we'll be reviewing today, Scorch.
Yeah, that's probably the perfect segue. Alrighty, let's get into it. Righty, so Ardbeg Scorch, the committee release.
So yeah, this was bottled to celebrate Ardbeg Day, 2021, and it was inspired by Warehouse 3's Flavor Breathing Dragon. Now, there's a whole story here around this dragon and the history of the bottling, and like, I mean, Ardbeg is like a distillery with storytelling at its heart. So you'll notice with any kind of new releases or committee releases, they have this whole big narrative around it. And
Wait,
I
what?
think we could.
So dragons aren't real? So this
Sorry to break
isn't
it to you, Brad.
this isn't real?
Oh god. No, they most certainly are. Yeah, no, unfortunately not. Now, as I said, there's a whole story around this one.
Wait, so
that I
Smog
think-
Smog was 3D? He wasn't a real dragon?
I mean, I'm pretty sure that was based on a true story, but they're not around today.
Yeah, no, I'll let you finish now.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was basically just kind of, there is a big narrative around this dragon that has charred these casks, but I think Ardbeg does storytelling better than we can. So we'll leave the rest of this narrative to you if you wanted to look up. And I think it's actually probably a really good thing to do, both if you've got a bottle of Scorch, is go to like Ardbeg Day on their website, and you'll have like a interactive map where you can watch a whole bunch of videos, and it just really sets the mood for getting into this kind of bottling. Because they, as I said, they are like, they've got storytelling at their heart, and they really go all out for it, like the whole 9 yards, for kind of, I guess, putting you in the space to enjoy the whiskey. But for this bottle itself, so it was matured in their most heavily charred ex-bourbon casks.
Right,
So these
yep.
are like casks that have been charred to the absolute max, like to the point where they had bits of charcoal like floating around in the whiskey. I don't think you'll get any in your bottles. I'm pretty sure they do strain that out before they send it out. But, you know, you're in for a really big smoky whiskey here.
Yeah, and going back to, I guess, the last time Ardbeg did use these charred ex-bourbon casks, we'd be looking at Alligator, which was another committee release.
Yeah, so they call it alligator because, like, when they char the casks inside, like, the way the wood burns, it kind of looks like alligator scales. And so I guess, like, they're going dragon scales for this one because of how, like, heavily they've charred it. Now, I think we have spoken about this previously with regards to casks, that like an oak barrel will hold whiskey in it, or hold any liquid in it really, for a long time. But unless you like heat treat it, you're not going to get much flavor. So that's why these casks are charred, both to allow access for the liquid to get into the wood. It's like a gateway for it. And it also kind of crystallizes the sugars inside. So it imparts a lot of the flavor, like natural flavors from the woods, in addition to whatever else has been in the casks previously. Now, I think to kind of preface where we're going to be going with this one is charcoal like acts as a natural filter. So it can kind of help filter out a lot of the kind of impurities in the liquid as well as in the wood. But also when you like massively heavily char it, you're going to get a lot of those smoky characteristics. But there's, I think what we might find is there'll be a little bit of those additional flavors, mainly from the bourbon, that we won't really get so much just because of how far that will be filtered. So we won't get a lot of influence from what has been previously in the casks. But, I think they're going to more than make up for that with the level of smoke.
Yeah.
But I think before we jump into it, just one last thing, because I have just got a listener question. They want to know what Ardbeg Day is. Like, we've spoken a lot about it, but what actually is it? So many people would know, if you're fans of whiskey, which I would presume you are listening to our podcast, and have been around social media kind of end of May, you'd know that the Ìle festival, or Fèis Ìle, took place, which is like a 10-day festival that celebrates kind of all things whiskey, but predominantly Ìle whiskies. And usually a distillery gets their own day where they're kind of highlighted and celebrated. And June 5 was Ardbeg Day. So more often than not, but I know Ardbeg has really capitalized on this, is they have a yearly release that comes out on Ardbeg Day. So it usually is preceded by a committee release of that same bottle, but coming out at cask strength. So that's the one we've got here. For any other listeners who either got onto the bottle on Ardbeg Day or have purchased it since from select retailers, you would have the one that comes in like this really cool box with a fun design on it. The committee release doesn't come with a box, unfortunately, but it's got a cool label that's slightly burnt as well, which does still kind of draw you into this setting they want to communicate.
Yeah. And in terms of like a previous release for us would be black. And black, we have the bottle of the Ardbeg Day release, not the committee release. So
Yeah,
kind of switch it around this year. We've got the committee release this time around.
Yeah, so coming in at cask strength, it's 51.7%. And like all Ardbegs, it's non-chill filtered. There's no age statement on this, but I think even looking at the color of this one, like comparing it from memory now, because I don't have it in front of me, Ardbeg 10 and Wee Beastie, they're both very light. However, this one's a little darker. And I want to say that's probably come from like the heavily burnt insides of the casks they've been aged in.
Yeah, I think you're being a bit like, I think it's more than a little darker than Ardbeg 10. Ardbeg 10.
It's quite a bit.
Yeah. Ardbeg 10 is like straw. This is almost deep brass, like the handle of a sword. Get into the narrative. Get into the narrative, Daniel. Come on.
Being a little bit too analytical there.
Yeah, no, it's a lot darker. Something you don't typically see from Ardbeg when you're looking at the 5 and the 10. But I mean,
yeah,
you love to see some color in whiskey, right?
You do. I mean, like that's not the end, like the beginning and end of it. It is a part of it, and it's like usually that's kind of why we prefer natural color, because then you kind of have an idea of what you're going in for. Because we do usually associate like a lighter flavor with more of those bourbon notes, and then you go to the darker flavors for a more kind of heavy sherry syrupy note.
Yeah. So starting on the nose on the Scorch here, I think it's very, very interesting because now we've allowed it to kind of breathe in the glass, give it a bit of time. Comparing to my first experience with this, it's a lot drier on the nose. And I'm not getting as much as the oil coming through. And what's really interesting to me is the smokiness that you're expecting from this extremely dragon charred cask isn't really too present on the nose. What I'm finding is I'm really being enveloped by more of a maritime character.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I think like there are a couple of factors here. I mean, like, because like every time I pop this bottle open, and by every time I mean like the 3 times I have opened it, the first thing that does hit me is this smoke. So it is still undoubtedly there. I just think when you leave it in the glass to open up, you get a lot of the kind of more subtle underlying notes come to the forefront as the kind of really dominant smoke distributes throughout the glass in the room. Because it is still undoubtedly smoky, but you are right. There is a lot more that is coming out now upon bringing it up to the nose. And I'm I'm finding a lot more like it's weird. It's like in the fragrance section. So there's still very kind of outdoor natural smells. You're getting like tree notes. I don't know, like herby tree notes. Like I'm getting a little bit of pine resin, which I picked up in the Wee Beastie as well. I think that's a similar note. I also want to say there's something almost floral as well. And I think that I would attribute to a lavender. It's not like an overwhelming lavender smell, but that's kind of what I'm picking out.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting nose when you've given it time to really breathe in the glass. Like I mentioned before, going back to my first experience with it, I didn't really give it too much time because I just really wanted to get into the glass itself. Being an Ardbeg committee release, I just wanted to jump in, and with that, all I was really getting off the nose was that extreme smoke and a real sense of an oily characteristic. But now seeing the real character of the bottle when you give it some time, it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. But there is still this smoke that dominates through everything. Should we get onto the palate?
Yeah, let's get onto it.
Now, one of the first things I noticed was weird. I took a drink of it, and it felt like fire crackling over my reminiscent of like a crackling fireplace. So that was really enjoyable. But there is a very sooty smoke to it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It feels like old chimney, a fireplace that has long since cooled down and dried out, but there's still like that soot that coats everything.
Yeah, I do get the smokiness on the palate, and definitely what I really enjoy is that smokiness is very quickly followed by a briny note,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still oily as well, so it's really coating your palate. And what I'm finding is what I'm left with on the finish is a real medicinal note as well. So I'm getting like a little bit of iodine, not too much, but it's just a really satisfying dram. It's interesting as well to see the heat of the alcohol come across when typically, I mean, this is only 51.7%, so it's not overtly strong.
Only.
Oh, no, I'm like trying to put it in a sense of,
Yeah.
I guess, where I'm at with drinking whiskey, where I know I'm well into the 60% that I'm fine and can handle that. So seeing something at 51.7% come across and still display such a satisfying heat from the spirit, it's really great, and a testament to the guys at Ardbeg.
Yeah, I find the finish for me is more like an aniseed, so like that licoricey note, but not super strong and I don't know if it's the right word, but chemically, not like you'd find in like a licorice lolly or a licorice lozenge or something, but it's more like the herb, the aniseed or anise. And then kind of like simultaneous to that, I'm also getting a like black coffee shortly followed by a peppermint. So it's like drinking black coffee and then you chuck in a mint to freshen your breath. It's that kind of mixture between like the bittery note of the coffee as well as the, what would you call it, medicinal note of the mint.
Yeah, and I think what's really, I guess, what really typifies this smoke for me as well, and upon this being my second try of the Scorch, is that it's a very sweet smoke, something that you don't really, I guess, something that you don't typically get from Ardbeg, where you're more typically seeing something more savory. I'm really seeing a sweeter smoke here. It's almost like a honeyed smoke. And I guess just to dwell on the finish a little more, the notes from Ardbeg, they do say that it's a finish that will drag on, indicating a long, lengthy finish. Unfortunately for myself, I don't really get that experience. For me, I'm finding it's more of a short to medium as opposed to a long finish.
Yeah, I would call it a medium finish. I think I've still got that smoky note as well as that kind of back of the throat peppermint sticking with me for a little bit, but it's not like a crazy, like I've had longer finishes in whiskeys, and part of me isn't sure how much this has to do with the cask and the aging, or even the charring, because a lot of the ones that have really stuck in our minds as really big, long finishes are the ones that have been aged in sherry casks. And so we're usually drawing that to like a fortified wine, which is very syrupy and sticky. So it does have that kind of mouth coating sweetness that does like go on for days. And this doesn't have that, whether it, as we said, whether it's coming from like a bourbon cask or coming from the heavily charring of the cask, lowering those kind of intake of other things that might have previously been stored on the surface inside from previous agings. That's a question for distillers and people who know a little bit more about how they chemically interact than I do.
Yeah. I just had another sip from the glass, and what I find as well is if you really dwell on it and you let it sit there, you really can almost taste the charcoal from the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great.
Yeah, 100% agree. That is one of the things I do really love about this, is how I'm getting that kind of really smoky, sooty peat over the earthy vegetal peat. Should we add a touch of water?
Yeah, I've just chucked a couple drops in. So with the addition of water, the briny characteristics really do jump out of the glass now. They were present before, but it's almost all that's present now.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you.
Like you definitely get that sea spray.
Yeah, definitely getting sea spray, and that sweetness is coming through on the nose too now.
So on the palate, the honey that I described before comes through a lot more. And funnily enough, I get more of a peaty characteristic, and I still feel the presence of the maritime and the brininess there. But what I'm really surprised by is how much softer the whiskey has become.
Yeah, so what I think I've really loved about this is it's insane how much this has changed from adding that little bit of water to now like a almost fully coastal maritime dram.
Yeah.
Like that perfect way to describe it, because I've gone from cleaning out a chimney to now walking on a Scottish beach on a rainy day where you've got like old fishing boats sitting there and wet rope and a lot of like sea spray throwing up, and the air's very full of maritime but also vegetal peaty notes.
It's just really interesting to see how the water's changed it. And going back to that note of honey that I was picking up before and being a bit more prominent now, even on the nose, you can almost, it's like honeyed barbecue.
I'm not getting those same kind of savory meaty notes from it that I have been getting from previous releases. That it is, you've got that really kind of honey glaze, maple glaze coating of food that's getting cooked off.
Yeah, it's a very enticing dram. Something that you probably wouldn't, something that you wouldn't typically associate. A dram that's been named after a dragon, or a dram that's got this extensively scorched cask behind it. You wouldn't typically associate that, I guess, with something so enticing, something so inviting, just off the nose. And I think, yeah, and just to mention as well, like we have seen, I guess, some mixed reviews to Scorch, and I think that's probably coming from the expectation of expecting something that was really gonna, I guess, give you a fight, and it's not really that type of dram or that type of whiskey that I'm finding at all.
Yeah, that is a tough one, because I know that like those kind of opinions are very subjective, and for whatever reason people provide mixed reviews. I think some of that could come down to personal preference, some of that could come down to price point, some of that could come down to, I don't know, some people don't like the novelty of things because it seems to be like a marketing ploy. But yeah, like at the same time, they're a business and they need to move their product, and they need to keep selling their product for us to be able to buy it. And I mean, like, supply and demand and whatnot, but us as a consumer, we need to decide what we spend money on and how much we're willing to spend. And like, just for me personally, I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm perfectly happy with the money I spent on this, and I probably would again if I had the chance to buy another bottle, say, everyone's entitled to their own opinions. Just from my side, I think this is a very good release. I think they've done well. They've found like that really good balance between offering something that carries an extra level of smoke to peated whiskies that we often say, like, we try to chase and find that kind of new hit from a peated whiskey that gives us that, yeah, that's the stuff. This is why we love peated whiskey. And this offered that for me. Like, it offered something. When I opened it and I smelt it, I was like, oh yeah, in for a treat now. And it hasn't disappointed. It is just different from other ones we've tried.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting dram for me. One that I can definitely see where some disappointment comes from, where if you've been reading the tale of it and you're really into the backstory of this whiskey and you're expecting something with a big smoky character, you're definitely not getting that. I can see where you can be disappointed. But at the same time, this is a great whiskey. I really, really do enjoy it. And it has me very, very intrigued to go out and see the Ardbeg Day release and really compare it and to see how that compares to the committee release, because there's not too much disparity between their ABV here, with that being at typically 46%. So that's not a lot. There's not a lot in that. So I'd really like to see how that plays out. And what I'd really like to see as well is that, is the 46% going to be more leaning towards what we're experiencing here with the drop of water? And if that's the case, that's very, very intriguing to me. And just before I finish the dram as well, what I'm getting as well, what I'm finding is, like, as I keep drinking now with that water, is that I'm almost getting some fruity characteristics present now.
I'm getting that along the version of like a juicy lime.
Yeah, very, very interesting. The way this whiskey really changes and camouflages and moves around in the glass. Very, very good. But with that, yeah, my glass is finished. So, dram in words.
Do you want me to go first? Or you got yours?
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for you to go first. I do have mine, though. I do have mine.
Yeah. So, my one, I'm a chimney sweep. I've just been like trying to unclog a chimney and just, hit a huge chunk of soot. It's come spurting up in my face, and I feel like I'm just sucking on a chimney pipe.
Pretty good. Pretty good. All right. So mine is I've got it. I'm Bilbo, and I've stumbled into Smaug's lair, aka Benedict Cumberbatch, and he's there whispering sweet, smoky charcoal tales of adventures past in my ear. Love it. It's really good.
Nice.
Right. So rating time. All right. So Daniel, Ardbeg Scorch community release. Where does this sit for you?
I'm going to give this one an 8.7.
8.7. That's pretty high.
Yeah, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. It makes me sad that it's only a limited release. I think it is such an enjoyable whiskey to sip on, both because it is really smoky. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love. Like, it's one of my favorite characteristics of peated whiskeys is when you can find ones that do a really good expression of smoke. Like, I'm all there. I love smoked things, smoked cheese, smoked meats. Like, just, yeah, it is a really good flavor. And what about you, Brad?
So this one's tough for me, I don't exactly know where I really want to throw it, because it's one that I can see myself growing to enjoy even more than I currently do. I mean, as you probably tell that from my dreamy words, Benedict Cumberbatch whispering sweet nothings into your ear. So it's something.
I call that a Saturday night.
Yeah, I think, it's a tough one for me to really accurately place, but I'd say it's definitely sitting in the 8.5. It's a really, really good whiskey. One that, like Daniel mentioned, very disappointed, of course, that it is only, I guess, around for a limited time. So, if you can get your hands on a bottle, go out and do so. And if you can't get a bottle, go out and have a dram of it if you can.
Yeah, it's definitely something, especially for Ardbeg lovers, like to experience, because there is a lot of similarity to kind of traditional Ardbeg notes in that, but it does diverge enough from that to be to have that. Like you look at Ugadal, you look at Cove Record, they have very specific kind of characteristics that really differentiate themselves from each other, and I think this is just another example of that.
Yeah, and it's definitely one that like I mentioned before, I do want to maybe seek out a bottle of the Ardbeg Day release, really see how this one stacks up to it.
Yeah, I know when they do the committee releases, like this is the same price as the standard release. So I'm just like, could I be happy spending that same amount of money on a whiskey that is a lower ABV?
But at the same time as well, you probably aren't going to find a bottle of the committee release now.
Yeah, no, you're not going to.
But yeah, it's definitely one that its rating I could definitely see the rating go up. It probably isn't a 9 whiskey, but it could touch the precipice of a 9.
Yep. It has room to move up, and I mean, I'm gonna call it. This is my winter whiskey.
So I guess
for 2021.
Yeah, so I guess I'm never gonna have another dram of that because that'll be gone by spring.
I was gonna say by Sunday.
Yeah, no, it's a very good dram. So one that I can wholeheartedly get behind. So I can probably say one that Dram Talk is definitely behind.
All right, I think that about wraps it up for our episode today.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for listening, ladies and gentlemen. It would be a huge help if you could give us a rating. 5 stars if you're feeling generous. If not, still 5 stars, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe. And if you'd love to get in contact, you can reach us at Dram Talk Podcast on Instagram. Check out our whiskey photos and see what we've been up to.
Yeah, or you can email us at dramtalk.au@gmail.com. We love to hear from you no matter what platform. Now, our glasses may be empty, but we hope yours aren't. So,
if they are,
pour another dram!